perfect. Great. Ooh, careful. Okay, we'll wait 60 seconds and see if Bishop Coyne's going to join us. Oh, no, really? It did? The escalator really? Oh. Wow, okay. That's funny. It's not so funny, I guess.
Escalator stopped.
It's like the DC Metro, you know, the escalators work half of the time. Okay, great. So thank you, everybody, for joining us for the second press conference for today. I'm Judy Keene, Director of Public Affairs for the USCCB, and I will turn it over to Bishop Coyne to introduce our panelists. And again, this is a bit more brief press conference due to the fact that the bishops will also be needing to get on buses soon for the Mass. So Bishop Coyne, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Down to the far left is Bishop Nelson Perez of the Diocese of Cleveland, and to my close left is Bishop Frank Caggiano of the Diocese of Bridgeport, Connecticut. And they're here to speak to World Youth Day, as well as the
Encuentro.
Yeah, the Encuentro, but also I was trying to World Youth Day and anything to do with the National Dialogue.
And the Synod.
Yeah, and the Synod. So.
And the Synod, great. So we heard two great presentations on each of these individual topics. Does anybody have any further questions that they would like to ask of either bishop? Yes, certainly. Yay.
Dennis Sadowski, Catholic News Service. I was thinking about this, what's going on. Now, with the engagement of young people, I'm wondering if the Hispanic church, Latino church, can, because there seems to be a little more engagement there with young people, I'm just wondering if there can be an example of how to keep the church alive with young blood, so to speak.
Would you want to start that?
I think I think there's engagement on both sides, actually, because I find great levels of engagement of young adults, Hispanic and English-speaking in the Diocese of Cleveland, and I also found it in Rockville Center when I was in Rockville Center. So I think there's great hope on both. I think there's a lot of work to do in turning these missionary disciples, these young adults, to face outward too, so that they also understand their role as missionary disciples as well, to reach out to their peers as well.
And I would just add this. I think in some of the communities that form our church, there is still, culture plays a very important role in keeping people engaged. And I think there is something to be learned from that. Because, for example, in Bridgeport, we have a large Vietnamese community. And their young people are extraordinarily engaged. But culture and tradition kind of helps foster that. So in the larger culture, we need to recapture what does it mean to have a Catholic culture that can be of aid to, let's say, young adults, to engage mind, heart, hands in the life of the church. Right?
The most I hear from young adults is they feel like they want a space. You know, physical space to meet, but also a space to be. And sometimes they find that challenging, to find that space within the church and within the structures of the church. And so we have to make space for them.
But we also have to, it's interesting, we used a lot of language upstairs about listening, and then it begins there, right? It begins by listening to the concerns of people. But then they want to be led somewhere that's worth going to. And that's where the authentic witness comes in. They want to be inspired by lives that really make a difference and are rooted in the life of Jesus Christ. And I think that's true of everyone, not just young adults. I think it's everyone who's looking for that.
It's a challenge, though, because the good news is that the Latino young people are not disaffiliating from the church at the same rate as the non-Latinos. But the rate of disaffiliation is growing and catching up.
Exactly.
to that of all other cultures.
As part of the culture's breaking down, that
Right.
traditional, right, exactly, right?
Okay, great. Any other questions that we have for any one of our bishops here joining us? Yes, Michael.
Michael Drake, American TFP. It's about the Synod. The Cardinal Archbishop Chaput mentioned a possible post-synodal exhortation. But are there any other expectations of the U.S. bishops regarding the Synod? And what would be the outcome? How would you view a favorable outcome?
Well, I think tradition has been, there has been an exhortation by the Holy Father following every synod that we've had since the Ecumenical Council. But my sense is we need to take that document and make a difference in the life of the American church. So I would presume that document is going to be the subject of discussion for a number of years here with us as to how do we enflesh it in our own individual dioceses. And I would think, for example, Cleveland and Bridgeport are very different. Bridgeport and my home diocese of Brooklyn are extremely different. What I am looking for personally are principles and best practices that we can, through trial and error, try to give life, at least in the Diocese of Bridgeport. And if we all are doing that together, I think there'll be some commonality that will come of it. But I think it's the starting of another process of dialogue, discussion, and rooting it into the very life of our diocese. So that would be my expectation. But I would be very surprised if there was not a document from the Holy Father. I'm presuming there would be one. All right.
Okay. Additional questions? Going once? Going twice? Okay.
Going to church.
Okay.
Yes, we're going to church.
Very good. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
We'll see you tomorrow for tomorrow's press conference around
Okay.
12:30, 12:45. Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellencies.